So we're going to do some examples here with the significant figures and the different operations. So perform the following calculations to the correct number of significant figures. The first thing to do is to use your calculator and just do the math, which I did not do ahead of time on this slide. So 2.18, get your calculator out if you don't already have it out, plus 5.621 plus 1.5870 minus 1.8 equals. And then write down what your calculator says. Mine says 7.588. Does anybody else's calculator agree with mine? Yes. Okay, so that's good. Just write the whole number down. Then think about significant figures. What kind of operations do we have going on here? Adding and subtracting. So the rules for adding and subtracting are that you're looking at the number of decimal places. So how many decimal places does that first one have? 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So 1 is the smallest number of decimal places. So then our answer should be rounded to 1 decimal place. Because this has uncertainty in the tenths place. So then our answer will have uncertainty in the tenths place. So what will we round that to? 7.6. Because we're getting rid of an 8, so we're going to round up. Any questions? Mm-hmm.
So this is different from multiplication and division, where
Yes.
we looked at all the numbers that are
Right.
0.
Addition and subtraction is different than multiplication and division. Multiplication and division, you're looking at the total number of significant figures. And in adding and subtracting, you're looking at the number of decimal places. That's the most straightforward way to explain it to you. That explanation breaks down under some circumstances, but we're going to try to avoid those in this class, so we won't have to worry about it too much. Any other questions? So the second example, 7.876 minus 0.56 plus 123.792 equals. Then just write down what your calculator says, 131.108. If I get it wrong, please yell it out because I do make mistakes. Which of these numbers has the fewest decimal places? The one in the middle, right? It's got 2 decimal places. So then we're going to round our answer to 2 decimal places. We're going to keep the second decimal place. We're looking at this digit that we're dropping. It's another 8. So it rounds up to 131.11. I just thought of another example. Let's see if I can make it come out right. 8.5 minus 6.5. What does your calculator tell you? 2. But looking at sig figs, how many decimal places does 8.5 have? 1, and 6.5 has 1. But the calculator didn't give us 1 decimal place. We have to write it in. What would it be? 0. So you need to write 0.0. Most of the time we have to round off and get rid of digits, but sometimes you have to write some in, and they'll end up being zeros. Any questions? Sometimes we combine multiplication and division with addition and subtraction. And so you need to be careful about the order of operations so that you end up with the correct answer. If there are things in parentheses, you do those first. You need to look at number of significant figures in the intermediate answer, but you do not round off intermediate answers. You do all the steps, and then you're going to round the final answer based on the number of significant figures. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but we'll do an example and hopefully it'll make sense. So do each of these. So first of all, what's more important than having the correct number of significant figures is just having the correct answer. So do the whole thing and write down what your calculator says. So in this case, we have 3.897. And you need to be careful because there's parentheses there. So times the quantity, 782.3 minus 451.88. Okay, and my calculator is showing me 1,287.64674. Anybody else get that? Okay. Now, if you're not coming up with that answer, you're having issues with order of operation. You might want to try doing the part in the parentheses first, 782.3 minus 451.88. Press the equal sign, and then multiply by the 3.897. If you're having issues with math like that, please ask me privately, and I'll help you, and we'll figure it out. Now, we cannot just look at the number of sig figs or the number of decimal places and get it right in the answer, because we have two different things happening here. We have two different rules. So we have a subtraction occurring here, and so we need to look at what is the result of that subtraction and how many sig figs would that answer have. So now I have to go back and do parts of this over again. So 782.3 minus 451.88 equals. So the result of that is 330.42. To that result, I'm going to apply the subtracting rule to figure out where my uncertain digit is. Where would the uncertain digit be? The first decimal place, because this one has one decimal place and this one has two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to underline that, just as a little note to myself. That's the uncertain digit. That's the last significant figure. So this number has the 3, the 3, the 0, and the 4. That's got 4 sig figs. But I used the whole number in my calculation. I don't want to round that off yet, because we never round things until the very end. Now I can look at the multiplication. It was this number times that number. How many sig figs in 3.897? 4. So which is smaller, 4 or 4? They're the same, they're equally small, right? So how many sig figs should my answer have? 4. So now I go over to my answer. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to keep up to there. That's the ones place, so I can safely round to the ones place without having to do scientific notation. This is going to be 1,288. Any questions? So quiet. I'll take quietness as no questions. So let's do the next one. Again, do the math first and write down the answer. So I'm getting 3.11852946. Then I will go back and look at what happened in each of these steps. So 4.58 divided by 1.239 equals. So that's 3.69652946. No, I can't. I'm having problems. 946. How many significant figures? If we were stopping there, how many sig figs should we have? 3. This one has 3, this one has 4. So I'm not going to round it, but I'm going to indicate to myself that's where the uncertain digit lies. Then I was taking this number and subtracting, I got lost, subtracting this one. Subtracting, we have to deal with number of decimal places. This one has 2 decimal places, this one has 3. That limits my answer to 2 decimal places, which is the second one. I'm getting rid of the 8, and so I'm going to report my answer as 3.12. Any questions? The good news is that in Chem 3A, we don't often encounter situations where we have mixed addition and subtraction. So this is probably a little confusing, putting all these things together. Focus on getting the multiplication division rule straight and the adding subtracting rule straight. Okay, and there will be exam questions testing your understanding of significant figures, but if you at least give it a shot, you can pass the class even if you don't quite get significant figures. Okay, this is not a deal breaker for the class, but you got to do some practicing. What's next in our slides here? Next section.